Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our Hall of Fame. And as we are in the top 30, Peter Heine, we have a case that I'm sure you can tell us quite a bit about. It is none other than the Great Dane, Bent Larsen, on 29.
Yeah, I am as biased as it gets about him. Obviously, it's my childhood hero and the best player in Denmark ever. And I grew up reading all his articles in Skakbladet about his older tournaments. And later in life, I was lucky enough that I was allowed to go and visit him in Buenos Aires when he was sort of a pensioner, and he helped me a lot in that sense. So, I mean of course, I think Ben Larsen belongs in the Hall of Fame, and I think he belongs in the top 30 as well. But now I have declared sort of why I'm biased. If we look at his record, we can see that in terms of world championships, he doesn't do spectacularly well. At least there is people doing better. He gets to the semifinals twice. Actually, the more impressive thing is the way he qualifies. He qualifies by winning two interzonals, and they were really tough tournaments at the time. Basically, everybody was playing, well, except Fischer, who would maybe play or withdraw or whatever. But he won those ahead of many who later became world champions. So he was a tournament player, but the world championship was based on matches, and there he didn't do that well. Still, that's comparatively. He did lose in the semifinals to Taral, and he lost 5.5, 4.5. The score was 4.5, 4.5, and they had a incredibly sharp and interesting game where Ben was blagging the Sicilian, and I think, well, he had a winning possibility at some point, but Taral outplayed him in the complications and went on to become the world champion. Later, he lost to Spassky. I forgot if it was the semi or the quarterfinals, and there Spassky was really extremely strong and won quite convincingly, but it was a very interesting match. I have commented the games for a small booklet about that. And then, of course, comes the very classical match against Fischer, where he loses 6-0. And, well, the Larsen excuse, we should at least mention that the match was played in Denver, and it was extremely warm, and this was one of his, he said that was completely impossible for him to handle. Well, I actually checked up on it, and during the match when it was played, it was the heat record for Denver, I think, for the last 100 years on one specific day when they played a match game. So I actually took the effort to check up if Larsen was just imagining things or he was right. My point is not that Larsen would have won the match had it been played in a better climate. My point is that I don't think he would have lost 6-0, but also Larsen's not problem, but his strength was that he was playing for two things. He wins or he doesn't win. So when he's behind 1-0, he tries to equalize. When he's behind 2-0, he tries to get back, etc. He didn't have any kind of breaks. And that's why what he really excelled at was winning tournaments, because, well, he played them to win the tournament. Most players you will see, they would care about doing decent. They would talk about their expected score and such. But that was quite a lesson for me. I remember going to him in Buenos Aires, and we spoke about my World Junior Championship I had played like 15 years earlier. And no, I said I thought I did quite well. I was seeded number 10. I was probably 8. And he looked at me and said, maybe you should have tried to win the tournament. And that was very puzzling for me. It simply hadn't crossed my mind. I said, well, I would have liked to, but, there were strong players and such. But it was a completely different mindset. Well, he thinks like a sports person. Well, you play a tournament, obvious to win it, right? I was, well, even seeded 8, of course I should have tried to win it, but it hadn't entered my mind. And for him, it was completely different. Well, okay, there is maybe players that are extremely strong, so I will try to win the tournament ahead, and I will take the necessary risk. And it paid off quite often, and quite more times it went pretty badly. Well, I'm pretty sure you will, for instance, ask about his personal statistics about the players. And, they showed that Larsen had pretty much a bad score against the giants of his time, but he beat them all and he won tournaments ahead of them all. And I think that's the scale he wants to be measured by. For instance, we look at his peak rating. He was number 3 in the world, but for less than a year. That doesn't give away that he was fighting to be the best player in the world. But from his perspective, he would say, I won a lot of tournaments. That's what counts. So for what he cared about, he did quite well. Also, if you remember, in 1970, there was this match the Soviet Union against the world, and there was this huge dispute who should play board one. And Larsen said that, well, Fischer might be higher rated, but he hasn't played chess for a year while I'm winning tournaments. Of course, I played board one, and Fischer said, okay, do it. You earned it. So at that point, he was kind of seen as at least a candidate for being the best player in the world and the candidate for a world championship, to actually become the world champion. Then, well, we all saw what happened. Fischer was a better player, and I think also considerably later in life, I think there was this veterans tournament in Moscow played, and well, there was some interview with Larsen, and they asked him, "Why didn't you become the world champion?" I think he sort of said, "Well, there was players better than me," and well, I think that's end of the story. There was actually players who was better than Larsen at his time, and he was a bit unlucky to face Spassky, Tal, and Fischer when they actually went all the way. So he lost, I think, 3 matches to players who became the world champions just right after. And yeah, that happens, but it's still, I think he belongs in the top 30 because, well, he managed to win ahead of everybody else, and he managed to outplay everybody and such. And still, well, we know the result of what happened in Denmark. He lost to Fischer, but he had a decent score against him beforehand and has just beaten him in the Pitagorsk Cup and such. So, oh, I think he was a great guy and a great player, but well, he doesn't belong in the top 10, but top 30, I think he just squeezes into.
Sounds fair. What about his chess legacy? Do you feel he's understood correctly? When I think of him, I mainly think of some positional concepts that are not exactly mainstream but make sense, like g3, bishop g2, bishop takes c6, bc, f4, 1 b3, that type of thing. Is that his main characteristic?
To some extent, I think Botvinnik said of him that he plays for positional tricks, so that he plays, as you says, something like bishop takes c6 in the English, symmetrical English, and bishop takes c3 it actually was against the Metnis. And while it's dodgy, it gives a complicated position and such well, there is some truth to that, but I mean, I don't think he tried to play things he thought was directly bad, but although there is some quote on the internet with that, but I mean, as we know, not all quotes on the internet is correct, right? But I generally think he was positional, and generally, well, he felt he could outplay people. I remember some point we looked at a game, I think against Portish, and he said, well, you know, here I'm maybe better, and then I will win because I have a good position. And I think I showed him, well, actually Portish can play like this, and it's equal. He said, yeah, then I'll have to win because I'm the better chess player. And I think that was his attitude, that, well, he was willing to try and outplay people, and he would outplay them by spending a lot of energy and sitting there for a long time. He simply, well, thought he could outplay them, or else he thought that this is just a sport. It's about outplaying. They outplay me, I outplay them. But he would always try to challenge that in a way. I mean, well, if he thought he was the favorite, we will never know. That's only what you know inside. But he was trying to do it in that sense. So, I mean, well, you will see many who had an incredibly solid style. He would just try to play chess in every game and simply, well, try to outplay the opponent, and that's why he's lost to so many of the greats a lot of times, but he's also beaten them all. So, but I agree that he was more positional, but also open theoretically. He would often play some offbeat line he studied. But I remember, much to my surprise, that he made sort of a quite big compendium, actually like maybe 100 pages, before the Olympiad in Havana for the Danish team. And I saw a copy of that like maybe 50 years later or something like that. And to my surprise is that Larsen had deep knowledge of the Botvinnik variation, and he had a lot of details in the Maran, obviously, but in a lot of sharp mainstream openings, Larsen had his own ideas and made interesting paper for the Danish team. So he actually knew about all these things. He just didn't seem to think this was the right strategy for him to debate that. He would much rather face them at the board, but it didn't mean he didn't understand that the Botvinnik variation and such. No, this was
Is that a bit the Magnus Carlsen school of chess as well? Or maybe, I'm not sure if it's the current Magnus Carlsen, but a few years ago, he had similar things, no? Where he would often play some sort of offbeat lines trying to outplay people instead of theory.
No, I think there is something in that. Also, I think Jon Ludvig Hammer was pointing at some point that, okay, Magnus might not play theory, but don't get it wrong. He knows all the games and such. And, well, also it's kind of you to remind me of Magnus in this context, because, well, I praised Larsen for influencing a whole generation of Danish players. And, well, we became quite strong, but with all due respect, not in the league of Carlsen. But, of course, Carlsen's first book was Larsen's excellent booklet, Find the Plan, with 50 positional exercises, all with some kind of understanding touch and such, which was a very, very nice book, and still is. And so, I mean, no, you're right that, well, but winning has some kind of point that I think Larsen liked positional ideas that was not extremely obvious, but has some kind of depth. And you can call them tricks, but you can also just see it as some kind of understanding of that the rules might not always be true and such in that sense. But well, that's how I see him stylistically. But it's a good point that, yeah, you can also see Carlsen not choosing to play Fury, at least earlier to some extent. And well, it's not because he doesn't know the main lines. He's just trying to, win. And I think at some point I was sort of pressing Larsen about, well, this line in the Caro can, maybe it's dodgy. What about this move? And I think at some point he said, okay, I was trying to win a chess game that day. I cannot defend my lines here 40 years later. I think he thought it was a good idea at the time, and he was probably right. But well, there is this young kid thing that was a computer. I think he generally disliked computers, but at least I think also he understood that they had some kind of power in them. But I remember at some point analyzing a position with Larsen, and I told him, well, my computer is saying +4. He said, and so what? I said, well, it's kind of important, but well, different generation, right?
Yeah. Shall we look at two examples from his games? The first is from Santa Monica 1966.
Well, actually, they are both from that tournament, right?
Ah, okay.
It's a double round tournament. I think he wins it, but he's playing Petrosyan twice in the tournament and beats him twice. And well, the diagram you show, everybody knows, because it's well, it's such a beautiful combination, and I think it even went into a kind of recent Sherlock Holmes movie where Sherlock plays against Moriarty, and they use a theme from this combination. But well, they say now he plays this queen sacrifice, but I think also Larsen says that, okay, well, what else is there? I mean, if people said they were shocked when I sacrificed the queen, but what did they expect me to do? Just go back in shame and be a pawn down? Of course not. But it's a very beautiful combination.
Yeah, Petrosyan, the reigning world champion at the time. It's a great defender. But here, after queen g6, there's trouble.
It's really game over. I mean, let's say, instead of taking the queen, you could also play knight c7. But now it's made in 3 moves. With checks. Yeah, you see it. Yeah. Pity.
You're saying it's made in 3. Help me. I'm not sure.
No. I was guessing, yeah. I think I read it by Larsen. So he has to take the queen, and now comes to check.
This didn't happen. He went knight f4, but it comes down.
He did. Okay, it becomes the same position. Actually, you're right. So just show knight f4. It's actually exactly the same theme, right? So
yeah, right. Let's do this. He's trying to
dislodge the rook, but it becomes I mean, now the rook's an f4 instead of f3. It doesn't matter. So check.
King h7, rook h4. I just want to show.
Yeah, this is the important line, because now bishop takes h6 is very beautiful, and the king is just trapped, right?
Yeah. And
well, there is one important line. What happens after g5 instead of queen b6 check?
Is this another exercise for me?
Ideally, because I cannot see it right now. Probably it's very embarrassing. Maybe rook takes g5.
I've seen this position in so many books.
I think so. Rook takes g5, and on queen b6 you have c5.
Yeah.
And I think now there is kind of serious threats, no? So
bishop f8 checkmate to begin with.
Yeah. So that's basically the point, that he's stuck like this. And, well, as you said, he played rook f7 as far as I remember, right?
Yeah, that's kind of sad, no? Rook takes f7. White is not even material down, and we'll checkmate.
No. And,
king h8, rook g5.
Yeah, he won. Well, also, I mean, you can see there's no check on b6, there's no square on a5, so he can just finally cruise in and now check and discover checkmate with the bishop and such. It's extremely beautiful. I mean, if you did that against the reigning world champion, you would be pretty happy, right? I cannot really recall a recent Magnus loss like this, or Gary or something like that. So that was obviously cool. But I think the really cool thing is that he said, well, I won 2 games against Petrosyan in this tournament. And, well, everybody is talking about the first one. I'm actually much more proud of the second one.
That's more in his style in
Yeah.
some way as well. No, he outplays him positionally.
Well, exactly, or gets outplayed. It's one of those two. But here he does, and well, the point this is we're talking Petrosyan. We're not talking old Petrosyan. We're talking Petrosyan, the 2 times world champion, who with white just get outplayed like this. And well, Larsen plays the King's Indian. It's also, I mean, I think wasn't it Petrosyan who said that he's very happy people plays the King's Indian, or was it the Benoni? I forgot.
He said he's been feeding his family thanks to the King's Indian for
exactly.
many years.
So that's kind of typical Larsen. That well, yeah, that's what you said, but I have a different opinion. Or maybe he just likes the challenge. But I mean, here it went well, and you can see he's just horribly pacified, and probably all kind of combinations are happening and such, right? For instance, you can't play knight f2 because of queen takes f1.
Wow.
Just flashing my skills, but I've actually read it in a book. But okay, so something like this. So I mean,
yeah, he had already gone wrong, but it wasn't often that Petrosyan with white you would see him.
I don't think you will find that many examples where he looks like some. I mean, well, your first guess would not be Petrosyan here, right? I mean, so
no.
me or something like that.
No.
Yeah. Anyway, I forgot how he does it, but well, you're the one. Again, you can see knight f2 doesn't. Yeah, okay, I've said that 4 times by now.
Bishop f2, and he takes his time, regroups the queen to h8, which is also a nice maneuver. I'm not sure if it was needed, but the queen looked very good on a6. And to spot, can be even better here. It's nice board vision. Also, the king went out of the way to g5 before, so queen c6.
But there is some nice safety for the king there, right? You can't really get to it. I mean, it's typical. A knight can actually block a queen to some extent, right? So I have no idea how. Okay, now he actually uses a moderate amount of violence.
Combination, yeah. Okay. And queen a3 will get the job done.
Yeah.
No, so, both games are nice.
No, but also, I mean, you beat the world champion twice like this in the tournament. You do have a claim for being, you look like the best player at that exact time, right? And I think 66, 67, he was winning something like 5 tournaments in a row. I mean, I can understand he was trying to become the world champion and optimistic, but it didn't turn out like this, and we know the reasons for it and such. But, well, there were good days and good tournaments.
No, that's his legacy, no? He could play with anybody and outplay anybody in any game overall. Some
but
guys,
also, the cool thing is that he tried, right? I mean, typically you will see players who doesn't try. I mean, as we have found out, and we are some of the experts, you can do ways to force a draw. He doesn't try that at all, right? He just plays chess, and he understands that he might have a minus score, but he doesn't seem to care, right? I mean, I guess also when he played Fischer, he would try to outplay him all the time and such. And no, I mean, I wish I had the courage to do it, but it's not exactly my character, and neither is yours, right? I don't know who we have of the present-day players who just plays chess like this. It's not that many, right?
I'm not sure. To me, Magnus, although Magnus is dominant.
No, but that's the point. If you're the best player, you can do it. But we're talking about someone who's not actually the best player, but just takes a fight whenever they can get it. Maybe Maxim.
Aren't there many guys, though? Okay, maybe, Maxim plays a very fixed repertoire. He doesn't really...
No, but I mean, it's not like... Well, he tries to win. He doesn't force a draw. And he will play the knight off, and then you can do your worst player or something like that, right? But,
yeah, I understand, but it's a completely different approach and style.
I genuinely agree. I just... you said there were many guys, so just name one where I'll agree.
Yeah, I don't know, but most of the current top players are...
Well, Caruana...
like, maybe just, not going to...
I think Caruana is too strong, simply to... But, no... Maybe Grichuk, for instance, he will actually not really force a draw, I think, right? He likes
but
to.
He will play the Berlin and be happy with the draw against
because
his
it's a good
top player, no?
Maybe.
Yeah, I understand, but it's not Larsen's style either, right?
No, that is true, but
in general, I think everyone's fighting, but also in top tournaments, you don't see it often that people will go out of their way to play whatever, a sideline of the Caro-Kann to get winning chances, maybe with the exception of Magnus and... I'm not sure.
Fabi as well. Maybe also there's a difference. You could also risk that in Larsen's time, some of the weaker players in the tournament was actually considerably weaker than present day professionals and such, right? And also,
But that's what I mean. If you see a top player against us, against the 2600, they will play anything. No, they will play d4, g6 to generate winning chances.
I think I played Melody Amber at some point, and it took me a while to understand that while I have prepared the sharp lines on the knight off, they would just play bishop c4 or whatever in order to outplay him. Seems like a good strategy.
Very unfair.
Anyway, we were
good
talking
chess
about
players.
Larsen.
Yeah, I think this is it. The Danish giant from 1935 till 2010.
2010.
Very worthy entry on this list. And we'll see you guys again with number 28. Thanks.